How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Wednesday, Yom Hamishi. Let's light up the darkness. Yom Revi'i. Tomorrow's Yom Hamishi. Yom Revi'i. Who's in the house? Paul in the Great Northwest, Yehud in South Carolina, Joe in the Inland Empire, Melissa in Great Neck, Guy in Ohio, Sharon in New Jersey, Lorraine in Texas, Lucy in Minnesota, Belle in Texas, Joseph in Sierra Nevada, Karen in Northern California, Shandor in the Bronx, Bella in Florida, John in Maine, Frank in San Pedro, Aoife in Florida. Welcome, everybody. Lots of colorful stuff here in chapter 11 of Tractate Sanhedrin, the 24th volume of the Talmud, continuing our journey through chapter 11, discussing Mishnah number 1. Generally speaking, who has a place in the world to come? But we've been going on some somewhat lengthy digressions now that we brought in, certain passages from the Torah where there are allusions to the world to come and resurrection of the dead. Having mentioned certain characters and passages, the sages have some questions, and we just are exploring them now. We've already talked a little bit about Nebuchadnezzar, who was responsible for destroying the second temple. For destroying the first temple and creating the Babylonian exile. And today we're going to be talking about one of the other enemies of Israel, Sancherev or Sennacherib, who was a king of Assyria and who defeated the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, as opposed to the kingdom of Judea. This kingdom of Israel was much shorter lived. And this was a kingdom that was created in the wake of King Solomon's death, when his son was just a disaster as a young king, and essentially half the country seceded, created their own monarchy, the Northern Kingdom, and that was not a blessed endeavor. That was not an endeavor approved of by the Lord, and it did not last. And when that Northern Kingdom was defeated, and all the Jews from the Northern Kingdom were exiled from the land, so that's the 10 lost tribes of Israel. We're going to be talking a little bit about that today, though not right immediately. What we were talking about at the end of yesterday was Hezekiah. So Hezekiah was a righteous king who did the best that he could, but this was late in that first temple period when the level of the nation had fallen so much. He actually delayed the destruction of the first temple because he very much raised the spiritual level of the nation, as we'll talk about today. Okay, the verse states, and we're picking this up. We got a good start. Our daf is page 94. We got a good start on 94a yesterday. We're more than halfway through 94a. Having this little bit of a jump on it is going to enable us to actually do a double daf tomorrow. Okay. The verse states, "Therefore shall the master, the Lord of hosts, send his fat ones, mishmanav, leanness," right? Send leanness to his fat ones. Send among his fat ones leanness. What does this mean? Isaiah 10:16. What is the meaning of the phrase, send among his fat ones leanness? Sounds like Ozempic. That's not what we're talking about. The meaning is that the Holy One, blessed be he, said, let Hezekiah, who has 8 names, Shmona, 8 names, come and exact retribution from Sancherev, who has 8 names also. So the Gemara elaborates, the 8 names of Hezekiah are, as it is written, for to us this is Isaiah 9:5, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government is upon his shoulder, and his name is called Pele, Joez, El Gibor, Abi, Ad, Sar, Shalom. And the Gemara asks, but isn't there an additional name? Hezekiah, the name that we commonly know that king by? And the Gemara explains, well, that was not a given name. Rather, it is an appellation based on the fact that God strengthened him, Chizeko. Alternatively, so same root as Hezekiah, sometimes pronounced Hezekiah, sometimes rendered as Chizkiyahu. Alternatively, he was called Hezekiah due to the fact that he strengthened the devotion of the Jewish people to their Father in heaven. He elevated the spiritual level of the nation. That's Hezekiah. So his opposite, so to speak, the enemy, was Sancherev, and the 8 names of Sancherev are, as it is written in his regard, among the kings of Assyria. So 2 Kings 15:29, we have Tiglath-Pileser, and in Chronicles 28:20, Tiglath-Pilneser. And then in a few other places, and I won't give all the references, but Shalmaneser from the book of Kings, Pul from the book of Kings, Sargon from Isaiah, the great and noble Asenapar from Ezra. And the Gemara asks, but isn't there an additional name, Sancherev? And the Gemara explains that was not a given name, rather it is an appellation based on the fact that his speech is contentious, sichato riv, which leads to quarrel and shame. Contentious speech leads to quarrels and shame. Alternatively, he was called Sancherev due to the fact that he spoke sach and snorted out nicher, contemptuous statements vis-a-vis the transcendent, Maila. In other words, referring to God, but just this other name of the one above. Now, what's interesting here is when we're talking about Hezekiah, we're saying that he has all these other names by which he himself is referred to. When we're talking the righteous Hezekiah, King Hezekiah of Judea. When we're talking about Sancherev, who is a wicked king in Assyria, and there are all these other names, they don't refer to one guy, right? And so the idea is that Assyria, that enemy on the north of Israel, was sort of established as an enemy that God would use to punish the children of Israel. If our spiritual level fell, if we were straying after idols, if we, because of our behavior, God forbid, don't merit to live in the land, then this enemy to the north was being used, to attack us, to castigate us. So it's Assyria is the enemy. These 8 names that we're sort of saying are 8 names, alternative names for Sancherev, are actually the names of other kings, but we're to understand that sort of the king of Assyria doesn't need to be any particular king. He's being used as a rod against the Jewish people because of our own sins as a nation. So Rabbi Yochanan says, for what reason was that wicked person privileged to be named the great and noble Asenapar? It was due to the fact that he did not speak, siper, in disparagement of Eretz Israel, of the land of Israel, as it is stated, until I come and take you to a land like your own. 2 Kings 18:32. And he did not say that he was taking them to a superior land. Right? So this is after the defeat of the northern kingdom, when these 10 lost tribes were initially lost, right? They were exiled. All the Jews of the northern kingdom were taken out of the land. We've discussed before that they would be replaced by the Kutim, the Samaritans, non-Jews, right, who were brought in to populate the land after the Jews were moved out and taken somewhere else. This was common practice in ancient empires to subdue, peoples that you conquered over large swaths of land. If you move them out of where they were originally, where they had been living for centuries or millennia, it was easier to impose your will on them since they're already busy settling in somewhere else and aren't going to be so, anxious to reclaim their own land since they're not on their own land. It makes them more submissive. So what is this going on here, right? So the king of Assyria says to the Jews that he's exiling from the northern kingdom, until I come and take you to a land like your own. It's going to be okay. Don't worry. You don't have to feel bad. It's going to be a land like your own. And he did not say that he was taking them to a superior land. So he didn't slander the Holy Land. He said like your own. That's already a kind of slander, but at least he didn't say I'm taking you to a land that's better than your Holy Land. Rav and Shmuel disagreed with regard to that statement of Sancherev. One says he was a clever king, and one says he was a foolish king. According to the one who says he was a clever king, he said that he is taking the exiles to a land like their own, as he thought, if I say to them, I am taking you to a land that is superior to your land, they will say, you are lying. And as for the one who says he was a foolish king, he explains, if so, if he said that he is not taking them to a superior land, then what is his greatness and how would they be convinced to go into exile? They weren't being sold a bill of goods. They didn't have a choice. It's like they needed to be convinced, but it was perhaps a little bit easier, to say, well, you lost the war. Don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to just put you somewhere else in a land like your own, and maybe, it's going to be a little bit easier to move them around within his empire. But it's not like they had a choice. The Gemara says, to where did Sancherev exile the 10 tribes? Mar Zutra says he exiled them to Africa. And Rabbi Hanina says to the Selug Mountains. And the Gemara adds, but those exiled from the kingdom of Israel spoke in disparagement of Eretz Yisrael and extolled the land of their exile. What's going on here? This is a little bit tricky, right? Because this is not just what happened to the 10 tribes after the Assyrian conquest. If you think about this, Jews have been living in the diaspora for a very long time, right? So diaspora began for the northern tribes, this is probably 600 years before the Common Era. And they were scattered all over. Now those Jews eventually lost their identity tragically. The exile that we're in since the destruction of the Second Temple, almost 2,000 years and counting, Jews are still Jews. Many members of the Jewish people have lost their identity, many, tragically. But at least overall, the Jewish people has a sense of itself. But living in diaspora, what a Jew should always be thinking is, I wish Mashiach would come and I could live in the Holy Land, in a state of holiness. When the Holy Land is ruled by Torah law. Israel is wonderful. I love Israel. But the current state of Israel is ruled by a secular government. It's not the Messianic age, right? It might be the dawning of the Messianic age because so many Jews are living in the Promised Land. And in truth, all of us Jews living in the diaspora should be asking ourselves, maybe I should be living in Israel. Why am I not living in Israel if it's possible for me to live there? But what we should not be doing, even if there's a reason and a good reason to not live there, whatever we may tell ourselves, what we should not be saying is, well, where we are is better. Maybe there's some kind of a reason not to be there yet, but it's not that wherever we are is better than being there. And that's what the sages are now critiquing those exiles for. Those exiled from the kingdom of Israel spoke in disparagement of Eretz Yisrael and extolled the land of their exile. When they arrived at one place, they called it Shosh, as they said, it is equal, Shaveh, to our land. When they arrived at another place, they called it Almin, as they said, it is like our world, Almin. As Eretz Yisrael is also called Beis Olamim. And when they arrived at a third place, they called it Shosh the Second, as they said, for one measure of good in Eretz Yisrael, there are two terrain here. Right now they're starting to say that, well, whatever was good in Israel, it's even better here. Yeah. Maybe there's physical advantages. Maybe there's material advantages. But they're not spiritual advantages. The Gemara cites additional verses written with regard to Sancherev. And beneath his glory shall be kindled a blaze like the blaze of a fire. Isaiah 10:16. And Rabbi Yochanan says, a blaze was kindled beneath his glory. But it was not actually kindled on his glory. The blaze consumed the bodies of the troops of Sancherev beneath their garments, which were referred to as glory, as in that practice of Rabbi Yochanan, who would call his garments my glory. Rabbi Lazar says it means beneath his actual glory, i.e. the blaze consumed their souls, and their flesh was not consumed, like the burning of the sons of Aaron. Right? Remember that Aaron, when in the incident where they brought strange fire into the tabernacle in the wilderness after coming out of slavery in Egypt, they brought some kind of unauthorized incense or offering, and they died. And the nature, and we've talked about this, and the nature of their death was such that their souls left their bodies through some kind of a consuming spiritual fire, but their bodies were intact. Why is that relevant here? Because, Sancherev defeated the northern kingdom, exiled all those people. Eventually, he moved against Jerusalem, which is part of Judea, the southern kingdom. And he was not successful. In fact, that was the end of Sancherev and all his troops. 185,000 of them perished overnight in a plague. And that was the end of the threat to Jerusalem and the southern kingdom. Where am I? And so just as there, the death of the sons of Aaron entailed the burning of the soul and the body remained intact, so too here, the troops of Sancherev entailed the burning of the soul and the bodies remained intact. And it was taught in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Korcha with regard to Pharaoh, right? Pharaoh in Egypt to enslave the Jews, who himself blasphemed God, the Holy One, blessed be He. God extracted retribution from him. With regard to Sancherev, who blasphemed God by means of an agent, the Holy One, blessed be He, exacted retribution from him by means of an agent. Now we're 94b. Pharaoh blasphemed God, as it is written that he said to Moses and Aaron, quote, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice?" Exodus 5:2. So the Holy One, blessed be He, himself exacted retribution from him. As it is written, and the Lord overthrew Egypt in the midst of the sea, himself and not an angel. Exodus 14:27. And it is written, you have trodden through the sea with your horses, Habakkuk 3:15. Sancherev blasphemed God by means of an agent. As it is written, 2 Kings 19:23, by your messengers you have taunted the Lord. The Holy One, blessed be He, exacted retribution from Him by means of an agent. As it is written, then the angel of the Lord went forth and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. You can read that episode in 2 Kings 19:35. Rabbi Hanina bar Papa raises a contradiction. It is written that Sancherev said, and I will enter into its farthest height, Isaiah 37:24. And it is written in a parallel verse that he said, and I have entered into its farthest lodge, 2 Kings 19:23. And the Gemara resolves the contradiction. That wicked person said, initially I will destroy the earthly dwelling place below, i.e. the temple, its farthest lodge, and thereafter I will destroy the heavenly dwelling place above, its farthest height. All right, so Sancherev thought that he was dealing with some kind of, he was an idolater, and he thought he was dealing with just one other of the idolatrous false gods, that his previous enemies had worshipped. He didn't realize that he was up against the one and only, the only God. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, what is the meaning of that which is written in the statement of Rab Shakeh, emissary of Sancherev? Have I now come up without the Lord against this place to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. 2 Kings 18:25. What? The Lord spoke to Sancherev or to one of his ministers or generals, his representative, and told them to go destroy Israel? What? Is that what he's saying? What is this command to destroy the land? And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi explains it is referring to the fact that he heard the prophet who said, since the people rejected the waters of Shiloah that flow the waters of Shiloah that flow slowly and rejoice with Rezin and the son of Remaliah. Now, therefore, behold, the Lord brings upon them the king of Assyria. Right? In other words, the people rejected God, and so now God is rejecting and punishing the Jewish people by means of a stick. Right? So the Syrians and their king, Sancherev, that's just a stick being wielded by the Lord to punish the Jewish people. And, our enemies have had success against the Jews, but it never goes well for them in the end. Rav Yosef says, were it not for the Aramaic translation of this verse, I would not know what it is saying. It is translated, since this people loathed the reign of the house of David that led them gently, right? The people who seceded from the kingdom of Israel, which they then called Judea, and they formed this northern kingdom, not ruled by the Davidic dynasty. So they rejected the house of David, which led them gently, like the waters of Shiloah, which flowed gently. And they preferred Rezin, this is a proper noun, Rezin, and the son of Remaliah, who were kings from the northern kingdom of Israel. And so the verse continues, now, therefore, behold, the Lord brings upon them the king of Assyria. They rejected the house of David. They set up their own king, not anointed by God. God said, nice try. You don't like the king of David? You don't like the house of David? I'll send you a king, and it won't be your own appointee. It'll be your enemy that will destroy you. Rabbi Yochanan says, what is the meaning of that which is written? The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked, but he blesses the habitation of the just. Proverbs 3:33. So the curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked. This is a reference to Pekah, the son of Remaliah, who would eat 40 sah of fledglings for dessert and would still not be satiated. Why? Because his property was cursed. But on the other hand, he blesses the habitation of the just. This is a reference to Hezekiah, the king of Judea, who was righteous, and therefore his house was blessed. And he would eat a litra of vegetables at his meal, and he was satiated, as his property was blessed. Right? So that's a beautiful, metaphoric teaching that we can take out. A person who is honest in all his dealings and strives to live a righteous life, he can be content with his lot. He is wealthy, and he will feel satisfied with much less. The one who, in his wickedness, is always pursuing more and more and more material gain, so he'll never be satisfied, and he'll never know true joy, peace, or contentment. It is written in the verse, "Now therefore, behold, the Lord brings up upon them the strong and abundant waters of the river, the king of Assyria." Isaiah 8:7. And it is written, "He shall sweep through Judea, he shall inundate and pass through, reaching even the neck," in Isaiah 8:8. So Rab Shakeh alluded to that prophecy when he said in the verse in Kings that the Lord said to destroy the land. It's as if our enemy was aware that our prophets had said to the people, if you don't straighten out, right, if you don't live more righteously, the Lord's going to send our enemy to defeat us. And it's like our enemy got wind of that and said, okay, hey, we're here at your Lord's command. Not a bad strategy if you want to dishearten the people. Hopefully when we hear a message like that, we get the message. We need to cry out to God, and then we'll be so much stronger. The Gemara asks, but what is the reason that Sancherev was punished if he was merely fulfilling God's command? And the Gemara answers, the prophet prophesied about the destruction of the kingdom of Israel and the exile of the 10 tribes. But he, Sancherev, directed his attention to destroy all of Jerusalem. Right? It was the northern kingdom that had rebelled against the house of David that became vulnerable to Sancherev, but not the southern kingdom. And Sancherev sought to take all the promised land. The prophet came and said to him, for there is no weariness, mu'af, that is set, mutzak, against her. Isaiah 8:23. So Rabbi Lazar ben Barachia says that the verse is interpreted homiletically. A nation that is weary, ayef, from its constant engagement in Torah study is not delivered into the hands of one who oppresses it, metzik. That's the kind of weariness that strengthens you, right? If you tire yourself out in learning Torah and rising higher spiritually. What is the meaning of the continuation of the verse which states, now the former has lightly afflicted, Hakel, the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but the latter has dealt a more grievous blow, Hikbit, by way of the sea, beyond the Jordan in the district of the nations. So the generation in Judea in the time of Hezekiah is not like the former generation of Ahaz, who eased the yoke of Torah from upon the people. But the latter generation of Hezekiah, who intensified the yoke of Torah upon the people, is fit for God to perform a miracle for them, like the miracles performed for those who crossed the Red Sea and those who trod through the Jordan River. God is saying, if Sancherev reconsiders his planned conquest, good. But if he does not, I will render him wallowing in shame among the nations. And the verse states, after these matters and this truth, Sancherev, king of Assyria, came and entered Judea. Right? He tried to continue his successful conquest of the northern kingdom and now tries to penetrate the southern kingdom. So he enters Judea and he encamped against the fortified cities and he sought to breach them for himself. 2 Chronicles 32:1. And the Gemara asks, is this gift, Rishna, the invasion of Sancherev, appropriate compensation for that gift? Hezekiah's restoration of the temple and the worship of God in Judea? Right? If Hezekiah had done an amazing thing, his father was a wicked king, and I think his grandfather also, But he, realized that no, the nation needs to return to God. That is our source of strength. And he threw out idolatry, and he rebuilt the temple, and gave the priests what they needed for the holy service. And he ordered all the citizens of Israel to be learning Torah, that nobody should be ignorant, that everyone needed to be learning Torah. So he single-handedly, and he could do this because he was the king, elevated the whole nation, right? Because everyone was learning Torah, and the temple was reestablished. So if he did exactly what we're supposed to be doing, why did we come under attack from Sancherev? Now, in the end, it did not succeed, right? His tremendous merit saved us from Sancherev. But why were we attacked by Sancherev in the first place? It's funny because I was just having this conversation today in a different context, right? I was talking to a friend of mine who is a convert. And I'll just say about him that he was a clergyman of another religion. And he was learning and came to realize that Torah is true. And he left all that behind, and he gave up a lot, right? He gave up a lot. Status, money, situation, friends. He really gave up a lot to become a Jew. And then having become a Jew, well, at least his life in this world, it should be smooth sailing, right? Because he sacrificed so much to come to the truth. But actually, after his conversion, he also experienced many terrible, terrible difficulties. And what's going on, But the fact is, and we just heard a rabbi talking about this, and I think I mentioned it a couple of days ago, nothing good, nothing worthwhile is easy. If something is going too smooth sailing, that's actually an indication that we're on the wrong track, When we're on the right track, it's not going to be easy. But the more of these difficulties and obstacles that we encounter, the more merit and the more blessing accompanies the hard work of elevating ourselves, elevating our families, making those difficult changes in our attributes, in our personalities, to be a more righteous person. I mean, it's very, very hard work to make that change. And having made it, it's not like then everything is going to be so easy. It's not. The world opposes righteous people. It's the nature of the world. But, maybe it's a little bit like Winston Churchill said, people hate you, you have enemies, congratulations. It means you're doing something worthwhile in this world. Okay. Where are we? So that's the question being asked now, right? Hezekiah elevated the people against tremendous opposition, but he made it happen. And then he has Sancherev and the Assyrian horde with 180,000 soldiers coming after him and besieging Jerusalem, right? So does this gift of elevating the people merit that gift of Sancherev's attack? So the Gemara explains, when the verse states, after these matters and this truth, emet, after what matters is the verse referring to? So Ravina says this is referring to after the Holy One, blessed be He, preempted and took an oath. Reference with the term emet, truth, right? An oath taken by the Lord is truth itself. And what was the truth? This oath of the Lord, that He, Hashem, will deliver the spoils of the army of the king of Assyria into the hands of Hezekiah. And this was because he had said, if I say to Hezekiah, I will bring Sancherev and I will deliver him into your hands. Well, he will then say, I neither want him delivered into my hands, nor do I want the accompanying fear of him. Right? If God said, listen, you're going to be attacked by Sancherev, but don't worry, you'll beat him. And so if this was like an offer made to Hezekiah, he would say, it's okay, God. Better he shouldn't attack at all than that he should attack. Who knows how many of us will get killed and what kind of terror we'll experience while he's attacking. So even if we're going to win in the end, let's just avoid the whole thing. So what did God do? He didn't ask. He just sent it. Right? Now, in the end, it turned out great. Right? Not only was that army defeated and ceased to be a threat, but 180,000 strong army came down with all their weapons. We're outside the gates, the walls of Jerusalem, and then all of them died overnight in a plague, leaving Hezekiah's army with tremendous weaponry, everything that they could possibly need, as well as food, money, everything that army had was just left there, the spoils of war, which was literally brought to Jerusalem. It's like hand-delivered in a sense. So immediately the Holy One, blessed be He, preempted Hezekiah and took an oath. This is God talking, I take an oath that I will deliver him. As it is stated, the Lord of hosts has taken an oath, saying, is it not as I imagined it? So has it come to pass. And as I have proposed, so shall it arise, that I will break Assyria in my land, and upon my mountains subdue him. Then shall his yoke depart from them, and his burden depart from its shoulder. Isaiah 14, 24 and 25. So Rabbi Yochanan says that the Holy One, blessed be He, said, Sancherev and his entourage shall come and be transformed into a feeding trough, in the sense of a source of sustenance for Hezekiah and his entourage, as I described. Now, it is stated with regard to the downfall of Assyria, and it shall come to pass on that day, his burden shall be taken from on your shoulder, and on his yoke, and his yoke will be taken from on your neck, and the yoke shall be destroyed due to fatness, shaman. Isaiah 10:27. So Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha says, the yoke of Sancherev was destroyed due to the oil, shemen, of Hezekiah. What oil? The oil that Hezekiah would burn in the synagogues and study halls when the Jewish people were engaged in Torah study. What did Hezekiah do to ensure that his whole kingdom, that all the people in his kingdom were studying Torah? He inserted a sword at the entrance of the study hall, and he said, anyone who does not engage in Torah study shall be stabbed with this sword. As a result, they searched from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, and they did not find a single ignoramus. They searched from Givat to Antipatris, and they did not find a male child or a female child, nor a man nor a woman, who was not expert even in the complex laws of Tahara and Tuma. Quite interesting, right? Here it says in the Gemara, and with tremendous praise, that not only all the men in the kingdom were learning Torah, but all the women were learning Torah as well. And it is about that generation that the prophet says, and it shall come to pass in that day that a man shall nourish a young calf and 2 sheep. And it shall come to pass from the abundance of milk that they produce, he shall eat butter. For butter and honey shall everyone eat, everyone who remains in the midst of the land. Isaiah 7, 21 and 22. And the prophet continues and he says, and it shall come to pass in that day that every place where there were 1,000 vines for 1,000 silver coins, it shall be for briars and thorns. What does that mean? That sounds negative, right? Doesn't it mean that beautiful vineyards have been overrun by briars and thorns? So the Gemara explains, although 1,000 vines are worth 1,000 silver coins, and one could earn substantial profits through agricultural labor, the fields will grow briars and thorns due to neglect. The people of that generation were devoted to the study of Torah and engaged in labor only minimally to sustain themselves. Maybe it started with threats and coercion, but he definitely turned, because Torah study sells itself, right? The problem is getting people to a good teacher and to start learning, because most people have heard, they don't know, they don't even know what they don't know, right? But once people start learning Torah, God willing, with a good teacher that inspires them, then you don't have to keep the sword at their neck for them to keep learning. Then they love it. And so he was saying, the people just became, that the spiritual level got much higher. People weren't so concerned about material things. It was just enough to keep sustaining themselves. but everybody was learning. The whole nation was involved in the project of learning Torah. And that elevated them, and that defeated this huge army that had come to destroy them without them, without them firing a single arrow. It's good to remember this when we hear these debates in modern times about, that there's all these young men in yeshivas learning Torah 18 hours a day, and why aren't they in the army fighting? You know why? Because the soldiers that we all pray for, and they should be well and successful, and we need them, and we also need the scholars who are learning. There's no contradiction there. We need both. We need strong warriors, and we need Torah warriors to protect the land. It is written, and your spoils shall be gathered like the gathering of the locusts. As the advance of the locust shall he advance. Isaiah 33:4. So the prophet said to the Jewish people, gather your spoils from the army of Sancherev. And they said to him, are we to pillage the spoils, each person for himself, or are we to divide the spoils with the monarchy? And he said to them, gather the spoils like the gathering by the locusts. Just as in the gathering by the locusts, each and every one of the locusts takes food for himself, so too, in gathering your spoils, each and every one of you shall take spoils for himself. The people of Jerusalem went out and took booty, right, from the dead Assyrian army. They said to him, since the army of Sancherev came to Jerusalem after its conquest of the northern kingdom, isn't the property of the 10 tribes intermingled with it? And therefore gathering the spoils would be robbery. And he said to them, as the advance of the locusts, Gevim, shall he advance. What does this mean? Just as these pools of water elevate a person from a state of tuma, of ritual impurity, to a state of purity, tahara, through immersion, so too the property of the Jewish people, once it falls into the hands of Gentiles, it immediately purifies the property in the sense that it is no longer considered robbery to take it. Why? Because its owners despaired of its recovery. Right? Once there is yeush, despair, then they gave up. It no longer belongs to those tribes. Not that we could even find them because they were lost in the exile. But they despaired of recovering that property. So therefore, that property became the property of the enemy. And then when that enemy was, shockingly and suddenly defeated, the ones who could now go take the spoils from the Assyrian army didn't have to worry that Assyrian army had, despoiled the northern kingdom. And this is in accordance with that statement of Rav Papa. As Rav Papa says, the property of Ammon and Moab was purified through the conquest of Sihon. Although the Torah rendered it prohibited to conquer the land of Ammon and Moab, once Sihon conquered their land, it was permitted for the Jewish people to conquer it. We could go into war against Sihon. We can't go to war against Moab, but Moab is no longer Moab. Moab has been taken over by Sihon. So now we can go to war with Sihon and end up with that land. New subject. Rav Huna says that wicked Sancherev traveled 10 journeys on that day. As it is stated, he has come to Ayath, and he is passed through Migron at Michmas. He deposited his baggage, and they passed Averu Mabara, and they have taken up their lodging at Geba. And Ramah trembles. Gibeath Shaul has fled. Cry with a shrill voice, daughter of Galim, hearken Laish, poor Anasos, Madmena is in flight. The inhabitants of Gebim flee to cover. This very day shall he halt at Nov, and he shall shake his hand against the mountain of the daughter of Zion, the hill of Jerusalem. So this is Isaiah, first of all, speaking as a prophet tends to speak, a little bit cryptically, but also all these place names and peoples are well known to his listeners. For them, this is like the evening news, except he reports it before it's happened. The Gemara asks, aren't these more than 10? So the Gemara answers that in the verse, cry with a shrill voice, daughter of Galim, it is the prophet who is saying it to the congregation of Israel. Cry with a shrill voice, daughter of Galim, daughter of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who performed mitzvahs as numerous as the waves of the sea. Hearken, Laish, from this king, Sancherev, fear not. But you should fear Nebuchadnezzar, the wicked, who is likened to a lion. As it is stated, the lion, Arya, is gone up from its thicket. Jeremiah 4:7. Isaiah would perish, but Jeremiah would sort of take over being the chief prophet. And he, sadly, Hezekiah sort of halted, maybe even slightly reversed that spiritual decline, but he was not able to reverse it completely. And after him, the nation kept falling, and then Nebuchadnezzar would come and destroy the first temple. So the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase por ania anasos in Isaiah 10:30? So Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, is destined to prophesy about Nebuchadnezzar from Anasos, as it is written, the statements of Jeremiah, son of Hilkiah, of the priests who were in Anasos in the land of Benjamin. Jeremiah 1:1. 95a. We're on page 95a now. The Gemara asks, are these matters comparable? There in Jeremiah, Nebuchadnezzar is called Ari, as the verse refers to him with the term Arya, R-E, similar, meaning lion. And here in Isaiah, Nebuchadnezzar is called Laish. And the Gemara explains that the verses are not contradictory. Laish. The verses are not contradictory. As Rabbi Yochanan says, there are 6 Hebrew terms for lion. And they are Ari, Kefir, Lavi, Laish, Shachal, and Shachatz. And the Gemara challenges, if it is so that this verse is unrelated to the journeys of Sancherev, then the places listed in the verse are too few, as there are not 10. And the Gemara explains, Averu and Mabara are in fact the names of 2 separate places. The Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase, this very day shall he halt at Nov? Isaiah 10:32. So Rav Huna says that was the final day that remained from the punishment that the Jewish people received for the sin of Nov. This was hundreds of years earlier. We learn about it in 1 Samuel chapter 22. This was during David's time. And the astrologers said to Sancherev, if you go and conquer them now, you will overcome the Jewish people. And if not, you will not overcome the Jewish people. And the Gemara relates, he walked and traversed in one day a road upon which one must walk for 10 days in order to traverse it. In other words, Sancherev had an opportunity. He thought he understood, but he misread the situation. And so this is another, not only did he overreach, it was given into his hand to conquer the northern kingdom, not the southern kingdom. That would have been reason enough for him to be defeated when he reached Jerusalem. But here there's a kind of additional sort of hidden prophecies and spiritual connections that we're going to talk about. So when they arrived in Jerusalem, right, when Sancherev and his army, his massive army, arrived at Jerusalem, they cast mats, bistarke, for Sancherev and piled them high until he ascended and sat above the wall, to the extent that he was able to see the entire city of Jerusalem. And when he saw it, it seemed small in his eyes. And he said, is this the city of Jerusalem, for which I have disrupted all my camps, and for which I have conquered all these countries? It is smaller and weaker than all the cities of the nations that I have conquered with my might. And he went up, and he shook his head in contempt, and he dismissively waved his hand at the Temple Mount that is in Zion, and at the courtyard that is in Jerusalem. His officers said to him, let us attack now and begin the conquest of Jerusalem. Sancherev said to them, you are weary. We just marched a long way to get here. Let's sleep on it, tonight. Get up fresh in the morning. And tomorrow, each and every one of you will bring me a piece of a stone from the wall, equivalent in the size to the seal of a letter. And this will suffice to breach the wall and vanquish the city. In other words, he had such a big army that all he needed was that every soldier would take a little piece out of the wall and Jerusalem would be conquered. And the verse recounts that immediately. And it came to pass that night that the angel of the Lord went forth and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And when men arose in the morning, meaning the men of Jerusalem, behold, they, the Assyrians, were all dead corpses. 2 Kings 19:35. And Rav Papa says that this is in accordance with the adage that people say, when quarrel lies and is delayed overnight, the quarrel is nullified. Since Jerusalem was not conquered on that day, when prophetically he might have been successful, but he waited one day extra, and then whatever possibility he might have had of defeating Jerusalem was not only removed from him, but it was utterly removed from him. It wasn't just that he was going to fail in his battle, it was that his entire army perished overnight. Apropos the massacre of Nov that we just referenced a moment ago in David's time, that sort of created a prophecy that weakened the Jewish people. What was that? And the Gemara relates, and Ishbibenob, this name is not so easy to say. Okay, I don't know why in English it's Ishbibenob. Ishbibenob. Interesting. It's rendered here as one word, Ishbibenob, but in Hebrew it actually looks more like V'yishbi benov, right? Yishbi of Nov. So who is this Ishbi of Nov? Ishbi of Nov was of the sons of the giant. If you're watching House of David, which I recommended yesterday, it's a great show on Prime about David, his life, and when he was first anointed by Samuel. And I think there's a new episode drops tonight, and it's the final episode, I'm pretty sure, of season 1. And it's going to be David's battle with Goliath, right? So Goliath was obviously a giant, and he was one of the last remaining members of this race. And in this House of David, they obviously, because there's a lot of stuff that's in there that's not directly in the Bible, but is in the Talmud and in the Midrash. So the makers of that did do some study for sure from the oral tradition and Jewish sources. So who are these giants? These giants are the product of that time when angels of God procreated with daughters of the humans and produced the Nephilim, right? The giants. And they lived for a time on earth. And so Goliath was one of them. And in the show, he's not the only one. Who are the other giants? His brothers. And that's what we're talking about here. One of the brothers of Goliath. So Ishbi of Nov, Ishbi Benov, who was of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear was 300 shekels of brass, and he was girded with new armor, and he planned to slay David. There's a feud, right? David killed his brother Goliath. 2 Samuel 21:16. So the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of Ishbi Benov? And Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, this is a man, Ish, who came to punish David over the matters of Nov. And the Holy One, blessed be he, said to David, until when will this sin be concealed in your hand without punishment? Through your actions, the inhabitants of Nov, which was a city of priests, were massacred. And through your actions, Doeg the Edomite was banished from the world to come. That was in our first Mishna here in chapter 11, right? That there are 4 non-Jews who do not have a place in the world to come. And one of them was Bilam, right, the wicked prophet. And the other was Doeg, the Edomite, who had certain dealings with King Saul. Now, what's going on here? Did David, who was utterly righteous, kill a city of priests? Of course not. David didn't do that, but David is blamed for it anyway. What's going on? right? So God is saying to David, through your actions, the inhabitants of Nob, the city of priests, were massacred. And through your actions, Doeg the Edomite was banished from the world to come. And through your actions, Saul and his 3 sons were killed. Now, it wasn't really David's fault, right? Doeg was, as we read yesterday, he sort of told Saul how righteous this kid David is and inspired Saul's jealousy. And so Saul essentially went to war with David and kept persecuting him and trying to kill him. And then he ended up sending the order or empowering the guy who killed the city of priests because they had sheltered David. They helped David, and it cost them their lives. So in a sense, David was responsible, but, obviously it wasn't his fault, and yet he's going to have to take some responsibility because if you're the leader, the buck stops with you. God said to David, your arrival in Nov and your misleading Ahimelech the priest generated the chain of events, and therefore you must be punished. You may choose the punishment. Is it your desire that your descendants will cease to exist, or that you will be handed to the enemy? Well, David said before God, Master of the universe, it is preferable that I will be handed to the enemy, and my descendants will not cease to exist. So one day David went to hunt with a falcon, and Satan came and appeared to him as a deer. And he shot an arrow at the deer, and the arrow did not reach it. Satan led David to follow the deer until he reached the land of the Philistines. And when Ishbi Benov saw David, he said, this is that person who killed Goliath, my brother. And he bound him, doubled him over, and placed him on the ground, and then he cast him under the beam of an olive press to crush him. A miracle was performed for David, and the earth opened beneath him, so he was not crushed by the beam. And this is the meaning of that which is written, you have enlarged my steps beneath me, that my feet did not slip. And the Gemara relates, that day at dusk on Erev Shabbos, Abishai ben Zuriah shampooed his hair with 4 jugs of water in preparation for Shabbos. And he saw 4 bloodstains. And there are those who say a dove came and fluttered its wings before him. Either way, Abishai was able to read this thing that happened as a sign. He said, the congregation of Israel is likened to a dove. As it is stated, you shall shine as the wings of a dove, covered with silver, and her pinions with yellow gold. Psalm 68. So he understood from this that David, the king of Israel, is in a state of distress. And he came to David's house and did not find him. And Abishai said that we learned in the Mishna on page 22a, one may not ride on the king's horse, and one may not sit on his throne, and one may not use his scepter. So in a period of danger, what is the law? And he came and asked the study hall, what is the ruling in that situation? And they said to him, in a period of danger, one may well do those things. So he mounted the king's mule, and he arose and went to the land of the Philistines, looking for David. And the land miraculously contracted for him, and he arrived quickly. And as he was progressing, he saw Orpah, Ishbi Benov's mother, who was spinning thread with a spindle. And when she saw him, she removed her spindle and threw it at him, intending to kill him. After failing to do so, she said to Abishai, young man, bring me my spindle. He threw the spindle and struck her at the top of her brain and killed her. That's a different fate than the mother of Goliath and his brothers enjoys in this TV show, but that's according to our tradition. When Ishbi Benov saw him, he said, now they are 2, David and Abishai, and they will kill me. He threw David up in the air and he struck his spear into the ground, and he said, let David fall upon this spear and die. And Abishai recited a sacred name of God and suspended David between heaven and earth so that he would not plummet and fall on the upturned spear of the giant. And the Gemara asks, and let David himself recite the name of God and save himself. Why did he need Abishai to do it? And the Gemara answers, a prisoner does not release himself from a prison, but requires someone else to release him. And similarly, one in danger is incapable of rescuing himself. Abishai said to David, what do you seek here? And why did you fall into Ishbi Benov's hands? And David said to him, this is what the Holy One, blessed be he, said to me. And this is what I responded to him. The time to submit to my enemy has arrived. Right? In that earlier episode about Nov, when God said to him, listen, you bear responsibility for the debts of these priests, so what's it going to be? Am I going to let you fall into the hands of the enemy, or am I going to, curtail your descendants? And David said, well, then let me fall into the hands of the enemy, rather than that my descendants, that my line should end at some point. Remember, this is David, right? So David's descendants do exist to this day, and we're waiting for his descendant Mashiach to come and redeem the world. So obviously that wasn't the outcome. So it must be David fell into the hands of the enemy. But Abishai is arguing with him. Abishai said to David, "What do you seek here, and why did you fall into Ishbi-Beno's hands?" So David told him the whole story. And then Abishai said to him, "Reverse your prayer and pray that your descendants will cease to exist rather than that you will be handed to the enemy. In accordance with the adage that people say, let your son's son be a poor peddler and sell wax, and you will not suffer. Do not limit your expenses to leave an inheritance for your descendants." Okay. Don't live like a pauper so that all your money can pass to your descendants, because who knows where it'll end up. You should enjoy it while you can. It's interesting to use that metaphor here. Okay, I'm almost done, so questions or comments, please get them in. David said to him, "Well, if so, help me." And that is the meaning of that which is written. And Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to his aid and smote the Philistine and killed him. 2 Samuel 21:17. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says this means that he came to his aid in prayer. Abishai recited another sacred name of God and caused David to land safely after being suspended between heaven and earth, and they fled. Ishbi-Benob pursued them, intending to kill them. When they reached the place named Kuvi, they said the name of the place is an abbreviation for the phrase meaning stand and battle against him, Kum Be. When they reached a place called Be Tere, David and Abishai said, with two cubs, they killed the lion, meaning they expected to be successful. And they said to Ishbi-Benob, "Go find Orpah, your mother, in the grave." And when they mentioned his mother's name to him and told him she died, his strength diminished and they killed him. And the Gemara notes, it is after this that it is written, then David's men took an oath to him, saying, "You shall not go with us to war anymore, and you will not douse the lamp of Israel." Right? That we cannot take a risk that will, kill the house of David, because the royalty of the house of David is sacred. Right? It's already been foretold that the scepter will never go out from David, or I guess from Yehuda. Maybe it was originally said about Yehuda, but at any rate, we always pray for the Messianic age. We say that Mashiach ben David, right, the descendant of David, will come and redeem the world. Okay, that's what I've got. Quick questions, because I got to get to davening. Yosef, I have a lot of difficulty in moving from Boston to Nevada. I had a lot of difficulty moving from Boston to Nevada and even faced harsh treatment resulting in temporary homelessness. I've now been blessed with a job at a high school and have a place to live. This job suits me well and I live next to the school. It is easy to question God's methods in the moment, but everything works out for the righteous in the end if we continue to pursue Torah. Amen. And may you continue to be blessed and rise every day in righteousness. Sharon, in therapy, you only make a muscle stronger through resistance and repetition, and so it is with anything worthwhile. It only is of value if achieved by way of overcoming a challenge. Amen. And Kevin, with regard to Sancherev's army being wiped out, what did they do with all the bodies? Good question, Kevin. I thought of that while I was reading it. It's like, wow, that's a lot of bodies. I don't know, but I assume they must have buried them, lest the land stink with the rot of all those Assyrian bodies in Sancherev's army. But good question. That's what I've got for us today, and with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow at the regular Thursday time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a great